and welcome to this special edition of Trader Talk TV from Cannes. Today we're doing a special panel here from the Captify Villa, and we have a live studio audience with us. And I'm accompanied today by a phenomenal panel. I'll let them introduce themselves before we jump into the subject matter today.
I'll start.
Yeah.
I'm Duncan Trigg. I'm SVP for globally for all Comscore's advertising products.
I'm Dominic Joseph. I'm the CEO of Captify.
I'm Natalie Monbiot. I'm head of innovation at based in New York, and apparently the best smelling panelist here in the podcast. Compliment of the week.
Bit of a dodgy statement. I want to keep that today we're talking about branding and programmatic. Obviously, Cannes is all about creativity and top of the funnel, and we want to talk about how programmatic's going to make that work. So, we've chosen you today to give your insights and help us figure out how we can make branding work with programmatic. So, Nat, let's start with you, because obviously you work in a creative agency. Well, full.
Not really.
Well,
it's a media agency.
It's a fully,
we are
full
a
service,
creative media
full service
agency. That is what we are.
Yeah. So let's talk from your perspective, because you represent brands like Coke and a few others. Like, let's talk about how they're using programmatic on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah. So I'm focused on kind of upstream innovation. So basically bringing innovation upstream into the organization. And part of that is finding better consumer insight, basically getting closer to consumer truth and getting away from proxies and survey-based data and looking at real consumer behavior. So one of the main signals for that is programmatic data, so the data that we're collecting from in real time from the performance of in-market campaigns. So we're taking that data and basically validating our hypotheses about whether we're targeting the right people in the first place. So a case in point would be Rogaine. Originally we kind of assumed that the most receptive target audience and the sort of highest value target audience would be people who were kind of like already losing their hair. But it turns out it was men. It was people more like Dom who might be scared of losing their hair.
Okay.
And so not only did that kind of change.
It's a weird job there.
Not only did it change kind of our programmatic and sort of targeting strategy, which is kind of like niche and tactical, it also kind of changed the way that we kind of thought about the campaign altogether. So we started partnering with completely different publications. So we chose to partner with Men's Health, which was absolutely not on the consideration list to begin with, because we're tapping into this whole new mindset and consumer that we hadn't even considered before. So that's kind of how we're using it.
We'll jump into the data and insight stuff later on, because it's quite interesting. Obviously, with programmatic, it's mostly been bottom of the funnel retargeting.
Yeah.
You know, the Criteos of the world have done very exceptionally well, swept up all the money in the market, IPO'd, and still doing pretty well. But the programmatic piece at the top of the funnel hasn't really been talked about. So let's talk from your perspective. How are you guys working in that space?
Well, we specialize in search data, obviously, and the fantastic thing about our data set is our ability to find new audiences. And the use of data these days, you can get into interest and intent over time to actually kind of create new segments that are highly accurate, essentially. So we can find out whether someone is a shopping mum or whether they are really a festival goer, and we can bring those audiences into the new kind of formats that have become available in programmatic, such as video and high impact formats such as reskins and wallpapers. It's that ability to match the content with a highly profiled audience.
And do you think that our brands down in the Palais are understanding that, Duncan? You see the ad tech boats the whole way down the Palais. You know, these guys are bottom of the funnel experts, but the guys inside, are they getting, the brands inside, are they getting what we do?
I think it's been an interesting journey, because the ones that are the most evolved are the FMCG brands. And we work very closely with Kellogg's, for example. But for me, you know, the journey towards branding and programmatic has got to be tied to quality and ultimately verification. But it's not just whether the ad was viewed and whether it was viewed by a human being. It's that marriage of the contextualization data of the page, the user, the demographics, how they got there, with whether it will actually be seen or whether it was seen, that's ultimately going to be, to my mind, what's going to shape the market in the next 12, 24 months in terms of what's paid for and how much is paid for that inventory.
Sorry, it was a wasp attack.
No, that wasn't me.
It was a wasp attack you had to strike out.
So you chose to attack me. That's great.
I just kicked you lightly. Talk about creativity, right? This is predominantly a festival about creativity, but what about connecting the creativity and programmatic analysis and being able to target them? How can we get better at actually making the creatives within the agencies or the marketers use the programmatic function?
Yeah. So we run a bunch of studies called media trials. And so we use programmatic data as one of the signals to determine whether creative is having an impact on, on our target audience, the desired impact. But then we also use a lot of other signals in these sort of in-lab studies, where we're kind of looking at the physiological response of consumers in an in-lab environment to see what combination of assets and what context those assets are most effective in. So, for example, it's kind of building on what Duncan was saying. The context is crucial in the sense of we did a study with Sony where you could so if you're advertising a horror movie, it is more important for the context to be about horror in the sense of not necessarily in subject but in emotion. So, we know that if you're going to be advertising a horror movie, be in horrifying content. So match the emotion of your. So it's about so match the emotion of your message with the emotion of the content that it sits within.
And are you seeing much of that happening now in terms of how you as an agency use creativity or creatives in that context? Are you doing much of that?
Yeah, we try to be as emotion-led as possible. In fact, we've just launched an emotional listening platform called Heart.
An emotional listening platform?
That's right, yeah.
How does that work?
So we're partnering with a company which uses AI to determine when certain emotions are peaking in culture.
Okay.
So it's scraping
Is it Watson
signals.
by any chance?
No, it's not actually. No, I
like it.
I know. This one's better.
All right. Okay.
They're more holistic. They're scraping. Well, they're looking at signals across all of content, not just Twitter, which is basically what Watson looks at. So this is looking at how people have engaged with content across the web, and that can include UGC content, social content, but then also editorial. Like, what editorial content are people engaging with the most? And it comes up with a score altogether that basically determines, like, oh, excitement is now peaking.
Yeah.
Let's see what's going on there. People are excited about this topic. So, for one of our beverage clients, excitement was a topic that it was an emotion that we were looking for. And, we just saw it organically, like, peaking one day.
Yeah.
We're like, that's odd. That's not the Super Bowl. That's not, it's not a particular tentpole event where you would expect excitement to peak. And we found that it was Snow Day. Okay. People were like getting super excited about Snow Day in the Northeast and in the US. And we're like, oh, brilliant. That's an amazing, on-brand event to align with and own that we could not have discovered otherwise. And it's, with a great emotional fit with the brand. Yeah. So that's kind of how we're tapping into emotion. And it does seem to be a disconnect between the creative guys and programmatic. Like, so this data and insight stuff is actually going to help to better the creative process. I mean, Dom, let's talk about that. I mean, there seems to be, that's the way to get in with the creatives, to offer that insight.
For a long time in ad tech, everyone's been fighting around at the end of the chain. Everyone's competing for conversions, and as you said earlier, it's been primarily a
race to the bottom.
A DR-led product because of the scale and the availability of inventory. And I think now this ability to kind of, first of all, overlay other data sets on top. So you can now overlay TV programming schedules, and we do this on many campaigns. So we can sync up with the TV campaigns. Or you can overlay weather data on top as well. And that starts to then become part of your targeting package. But then the real value from this now, this data-driven advertising, this data-driven insights, comes from the ability to then get further up towards the top of the chain, where it can influence the brand and the agency to help them with their planning. And of course, overlaying things like events, like you said, and calendar events throughout the year, you have totally different reasons as to why you might be marketing to consumers based on that event. And now that's becoming so much more easy to do. And then you can then report back and influence the marketing decision in a way that hasn't been able before, because you can actually now provide things like sentiment analysis, so
like emojis.
Sentiment analysis on actually how do people feel about the brand at this time, and obviously with our data set we're able to see that expression of users' feelings through the search data itself.
And would you take that segmented and then basically give that to the agency to target against it? Is that the way?
Will you?
Yeah.
Quite like that.
Can do, absolutely, okay, yeah, of course. I mean, it becomes part of our strategy moving forward.
New product development here is great.
Partnership in real time.
Yeah, absolutely. It does evolve the strategy as it goes. I mean, it used to be that we'd run a campaign, we'd get an IO, and then we'd just bang it out there and try and get a single KPI. And I think that it's not like that anymore. It's a very fluid situation where it evolves as the campaign goes on, and we work heavily on mid-campaign insights that then go back to the planning teams.
So it's not simply just like turn it on, see how it goes after 3 weeks. A continuous.
No,
sort of insight.
I mean, look. So there are some clients who just want to get a low CPA, of course. But no, for branding, it's totally different. For branding, it's about let's look at this user set. Let's understand how we are engaging with them, what their feelings are, and how we can now evolve that way that we're connecting with them.
Yeah.
I kind of argue though that got a lot of these CPA campaigns, and certain clients just want DR CPA driven campaigns. But at the same time, because everything's become more measurable, you execute brand campaigns with the same rigor. You're just measuring and optimizing to something different.
Well, isn't there being the case? Sorry.
We work at Comscore. We work with both the buyer and the sell side, right? And going back to your original question about the contextualization of the page and the creative, they should be tied together, right?
Yeah.
So with large publishing groups, we work to contextualize their entire inventory by page. And if you look at that from a sales perspective, when you're selling sponsorship packages, for example, rather than just sponsoring the channel or the sub-channel, the ability to extrapolate that out and get relevant content to the core message across the portfolio is huge. And you take that from the buy side, running dynamic creative that is actually relevant to the content of the page makes a fundamental difference in terms of conversion metrics, right? But then you need to layer into that whether the ad was seen, and if so, for how long, because where's the core message, where's the call to action within the creative looping? All needs to come together to marry the quality of the creative to the content that the creative is appearing on, and then layering in the demographic profiling and the stuff that you guys are talking about in terms of intent. That's where branding, that for me, to go back to your point before about what the big brands are thinking, that's what they're ultimately after, because we can measure it, we can implement it, but it comes down to what's the value of the inventory, right?
Yeah.
Because if you're paying for the entire portfolio or the entire suite, and ultimately the ad server is the currency, that has to change, because as the market moves towards more and more branding being creatively executed through programmatic, all of this kind of quality, identifying the quality and then understanding what it's worth and how well it works, is going to set the price for media in the years to
Is
come.
that still an issue then for you? I mean, the context and the quality of inventory as well.
Completely, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that, some of those experiments that I was just talking about earlier, that's absolutely it. Like, we know that you need to be in a quality environment, and not just a quality environment. That's like table stakes. Like, if you're not in a visible quality, invisible environment, first of all, you need to be seen. You need to be unobstructed. So that's the first rule. And then after that, you need to be in not just a quality environment, but one that is relevant. And as relevant as possible. And today we're able to measure emotional relevancy.
Yeah.
We know that is actually the most critical component.
Are we seeing a shift away from thinking in branding where you just basically dump your money into TV and use some outdated metrics, and now it's becoming more, brand, it feels to me, is becoming more intelligent about how they hit consumers, how they put message out there. Are we seeing a fundamental shift in that?
Yeah.
And like the way you do it?
Yeah, so basically in the most recent upfronts in the US, we basically took a chunk of money out of TV and just gave it to YouTube. We're just like, and our global CEO, Henry Tager, he was just like, the best way to avoid, to kind of fight inflation is just to kind of avoid it altogether, just shift your money elsewhere. And so all those TV dollars are now working within YouTube, where we know the eyeballs are.
Yeah.
Well, we know the eyeballs
and also
are,
data-driven.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're able to be much smarter about targeting and measurement. And all of that.
But it's in the crossover, ultimately, that's the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, right? You can get mass reach through TV advertising, you get mass reach through a programmatic digital execution. It's where's the unduplicated reach? That's the key to my mind. And actually, if you're talking about 90% plus reach, you've got to manage expectations that the deduplicated reach is not going to be massive. It's going to be in the low single figures, right? That's what we're seeing with the cross-media products that we're evolving. But it's really vital, because it's tying in whether an ad's been seen in a given period of time by a user, and then understanding their usage of devices and then retargeting them, storyboarding, again, going back to the creative execution. It opens up a Pandora's box of opportunities for marketers.
So more holistic sort of approach as opposed to kind of stopgap type things. Dom, are we seeing the sweet spot for programmatic branding around video? Is that going to be like the key area? Like we see lots of money getting in there. We see lots of acquisitions. Big media companies buying ad tech and various companies going IPO. Is that going to be the sweet spot for programmatic?
I think video and TV budget coming into digital has obviously fueled a huge amount of growth within branding coming in programmatic. I mean, programmatic for years, as we said, has typically been a DR product. And now we've certainly seen a huge shift. I mean, almost 50% of our business is now branding. So yeah, I would say so. I mean, video is a large driver, but I don't think it's the only thing. It's the whole, and also formats are also kind of irrelevant now. I mean, formats obviously have different purposes for different reasons, but it's all part of a customer's journey and what they're doing on the internet. And our ability now as an industry to create dynamic solutions that are completely customized is only going to lead to further growth. And
programmatic seems to be touching everywhere. I was at a Spotify thing yesterday where they were talking about programmatic audio. It's quite interesting. So we're broadening the scope. I mean, that offers opportunities as well.
Yeah, I think it's even broader than that. If you take a massive step back and you think about, sort of what programmatic's about, kind of audience-based, automated buying at scale. One of the things that I'm really focused on, excited about, is the messaging space. And literally the ability for a brand to have one-to-one individualized conversations, lengthy, ongoing relationships with the consumer at infinite scale. So I think that programmatic is much bigger than kind of, what we tend to think that it is. And,
what about some use cases though? Let me talk about some of your clients. How are they using programmatic at the minute to hit certain KPIs and do the cool things that you want to do?
So I'm just on that same train of thought. So Sony is one of our clients, and for a program to launch the Goosebumps movie back in October, the goal was not to sell movie tickets actually, because you can't necessarily always measure up to that point. It was just to entertain and get people excited about the movie. But through partnering with messaging and an AI company, we were able to actually have the main character in the movie, Slappy, turned into an AI agent that entertained the consumer, the consumer within a messenger platform, and show them trailers, tell jokes, show them where they could buy the movie ticket, link to Fandango, and actually link to Google Maps, and basically show people where they could actually go and watch the movie. So actually, at the end of the day, you are able to, it's almost like we are smashing, the new platforms and the technology out there right now is actually redefining what we consider to be our campaign KPIs.
And are you seeing uplift? Is there measurable, results here?
So that was a very early pilot. So we didn't actually track that to sales, but we plan to do that now going forward. But what we're seeing is new metrics altogether.
Yeah.
So for example, forget click-through rate or engagement rate. It's like conversation rate, conversation return rate, length of conversation. We found that that fans were speaking to Slappy for an average of 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
Talking to
and there was a
Slappy.
30% conversation return rate. I mean, those are metrics that you couldn't have, thought up before, but they're very, very interesting. And again, we're getting closer and closer to the consumer truth, like what we need to understand about the relationship between our brand and our consumer.
Yeah. Just go back to data insight. I still feel that there's still this disconnect. But I'm just interested to see how your clients are using data and insight for the campaigns they're running.
So it's an interesting journey, because the more progressive advertisers who've got serious digital players that have been brought in-house is growing, right? And the
Netflix,
complexity of the tech stack for a marketing exec, it is pretty complicated.
Yeah.
It's not when we work in the industry. It's actually not rocket science, as we all know, but it's the drawing it together that is absolutely crucial, right? But the truth is that because if we're going to get to a point where 80, 90, even 100% of advertising is executed programmatically, that's being led by ease of use, right? And ease of use over methodology has been an issue for the last few years, right? So it's up to companies like Comscore to ensure we're integrated into all the environments that allow us, no matter what the client's DMP, DSP, ad server, the way that they ultimately traffic these campaigns. But it's not just
that, it's also CRM, you've all these disparate data points that are still very much.
Because the reality is, right, whether you're, planning TV, planning digital, planning video, planning mobile, whatever it might be, the tools are all there to draw it together.
Yeah.
Right? And this is a big journey we're on at Comscore with the whole cross-media panel product set. But the other side of the coin that people I don't really hear talked about much is how the agency market's going to cope with buying out of silo into a complete marketing message, right? And how it all ties together. That's a big journey the agency side's got to go on as well.
And Dom, are you finding this is that like your role in helping agencies change and sort of it's more getting deeper in with the clients, basically more data, more insight? Is that how you're seeing things as well?
Yeah, I mean, some of the more progressive agencies we're working with to integrate in an automated way so they can have our insights as an automated tool into their own platforms. That comes with a lot of complications, obviously, because everyone's got different tech stacks. But ultimately, our job is to make it as easy as possible for those decision makers and those strategy guys and the planning teams to understand how they should market better.
Yeah.
And there's a wealth of different types of insights that we play off. So, it ranges from brand insights, how the brand looks against its competition, down to product level. Why are users not converting, which is one of the big things, or interacting, engaging with the brand, which is one of the biggest things I think a lot of technology providers and vendors perhaps overlook. But we also then move into everything to do with, we're really kind of obsessed with trying to understand the consumer journey, and that involves looking at it across device, over time as well. And there's not many players in the market that have the ability to actually track that journey over time. And there's obviously there's a lot of players at the moment trying to connect the dots between mobile and your mobile multiple devices, which tells you one story. But we certainly find that there's a demand from agencies to understand more than just a simple linear journey. It's actually more about understanding what the user looks like in everything that they do. And that could be through completely non-intuitive connections that you just don't think about. And we see those on absolutely every advertiser we work with. And it's pretty fascinating stuff because users behave in ways that you just don't think. And then you can directly then, off the back of those insights, create new segments and then again start fueling the product.
Yeah, this is something that I'm also responsible for our lift products and our lift surveys. And we have a global relationship with Kantar and Millward Brown, right? And this movement away from last cookie wins attribution to looking at offline sales lift, the impact on basket for digital TV campaigns.
That ability to tie offline and online is pretty exciting.
It's very exciting, and again, it's got to be made easy to use, right? If you need 100 and 500, what kind of sample base, what the execution is. There's a plethora of different methodologies, right? And they range from a couple of grand to 50, 60 grand. And the market needs the ability to measure. If we're going to move away from the kind of business that's proliferated over the last 10 years where companies are spraying the web with cheapest chips inventory to saturate the cookie base to claim last cookie wins attribution.
Yeah.
If we're moving the market toward identifying and paying for and concentrating on the quality across media, then the attribution side of it has to be ultimately a vital piece of that jigsaw. Because without it, how do you understand whether it's had an impact on it?
Having said that, though, we find that there's a massive difference from agency to agency in the way that brands look at it and from brand to brand. Over in the US, some of the brands that we work with, as much data as we provide them, they still have a set plan that they have with their Millward Brown study or a Nielsen study. That's basically all they want to report back to, and that's, I think, is a slight problem in the industry because there is new innovative data sets that can kind of measure this brand uplift and user engagement in a different way.
So how are you looking at attribution? That's quite an interesting one.
Can I actually go back to that other question? I've been biding my time, patiently sitting here. So just back to the question about what are we doing with all these insights, which are kind of like a byproduct of the campaigns that we're running. I'd say the industry is moving so fast that things that are innovative, like whole new genres of companies and ad tech and etc., it gets old so quickly. So a couple of years ago, it was maybe 3 or 4 years ago, it was ad networks, right? Then it was like, oh God, ad networks are all the same.
Ad networks never die.
So let's go through this consolidation process, and they're all the same, and basically we're going to just do it ourselves type thing, as much as possible. Then it was influencer networks last year. The ability to scale influencer campaigns and celebrity campaigns and run them in a more data-driven way. And that, it's amazing, just in the last 12 months, that's got a bit old as well. So the thing that differentiates partners from an agency perspective at this point is really the quality of their data as a byproduct. And that is the differentiator, and the ability to take that data and bring it all the way upstream into our insights products. So I think that it is incredible how old things get, and as quickly as they do. So the thing that really differentiates us, one partner from another these days, is the differentiation in the byproduct of their insights, and the ability for us to actually integrate them into our process.
Okay, well, we'll finish the panel off with one last question. Do you think that Nat will be keynoting next year at the Palais, evangelizing programmatic and branding? Is that a yes or a no, though?
Yeah, with a fair wind, yes.
Yeah. Dom?
Absolutely, yeah, no question in my mind. You'll be buzzing off the.
She's up for hire next year. Gentlemen, Nat, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was Trader Talk TV. We'll see you next time.
That's so random.
Thank you, mate.
No worries, man. Cheers.